Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into a massive question in the world of large-scale initiatives. How do organizations actually measure success? We constantly hear about millions of dollars poured into development projects or social programs, but how do the people running them know if they actually worked? Well, it's a complex, behind-the-scenes world, and we're going to dive into some really fascinating frameworks together to figure it all out.
So how do we truly measure success? It's so easy to get totally hooked on the traditional idea of tracking data. Spreadsheets, charts, hard metrics. But can numbers alone tell the whole story? Think about it. If a brand new hospital is built but no one in the community actually trusts the doctors, was that project a success? Today, we're exploring the different lenses used to measure impact, and some of them might really surprise you.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the basics, progress and process. Second, the collaborative, participatory M&E. And finally, the narrative, most significant change. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The basics, progress and process.
To really wrap our heads around traditional administrative approaches to monitoring, let's look at a concrete example. Picture a massive development project, right? And its goal is to completely eradicate open defecation. The baseline study says they need to build 100,000 individual household latrines in a specific area over 5 years. I mean, that is a massive, tangible undertaking.
So how do you track something like that using progress monitoring? Well, it looks a bit like this. Year 1 aims for 10,000 toilets. Year 2 ramps that up to 20,000, peaking at 25,000 in years 3 and 4 before finishing out with 20,000 in year 5. This approach basically takes the project's MIS, the Management Information System data, to relentlessly track these exact quantity milestones. It asks one simple, very administrative question. Are we hitting our numbers and staying on schedule?
But hold on a second. What if those 100,000 toilets are built poorly? Or what if the funding paperwork is just a total nightmare for the families involved? Well, this is exactly where process monitoring steps in. While progress monitoring hyper-focuses on the quantity, the targets, and the milestones, process monitoring shifts the focus entirely over to quality, activities, and deviations. It's not just about hitting that final number, it's about making absolutely sure the journey to get there actually works.
Let's walk through a real-world subsidy checklist to see this in action. Step 1. Beneficiary takes site photos. Step 2. Construct the toilet. Step 3. Get a form from the district office. Step 4. Submit that form with documents. The usual bureaucratic joyride. Step 5. The office actually receives the form. And finally, Step 6. The subsidy is transferred within 15 days. Now, process monitoring watches this exact sequence like a hawk. If that transfer takes 45 days instead of 15, well, that's a deviation. And that feedback goes straight to management so they can fix that specific bottleneck.
Section 2. The collaborative, participatory M&E.
All right, with this next framework, we're pivoting entirely. We're shifting from what is being monitored to exactly who is doing the monitoring. There's a quote that perfectly captures the core philosophy here, stating that beneficiaries are viewed as active participants and not just information providers. So, instead of outside evaluators parachuting in to extract data, Participatory Monitoring and Evaluation, or PM&E, ensures all stakeholders actually share control over the process and the results. It fosters a deep, absolutely necessary sense of local ownership.
Setting this whole thing up is fascinating, but yeah, it's pretty complex. First, you've got Step 1, identify your key stakeholders. Then, Step 2, develop a framework. Now this requires getting everyone in a room to hammer out roles and resources. Just imagine the intense negotiations trying to get wealthy donors and local farmers on the exact same page. Once they're aligned, you move to Step 3, which is developing smart indicators and a performance management plan. But unlike conventional tracking, the responsibilities here are distributed among everyone.
Next comes the actual execution. Step 4 is collecting the data together. But Step 5? That's where the collaboration truly shines, analyzing the data. And this isn't done by some lone analyst in a distant, air-conditioned office. No way. PME uses joint workshops where stakeholders analyze the data collectively. They mull over the constraints and hunt for solutions as a team. Finally, Step 6 ensures this program reporting directly leads to collective, real-time feedback and course correction.
Now look, as much as we all love the idea of collaboration, we do have to look at the practical reality here, the limitations. PM&E is incredibly resource-intensive. It costs a lot of time and finance to organize. Getting diverse groups to actually agree requires a massive commitment, and you need highly adept professionals to facilitate these sensitive, grassroots negotiations. So it's a powerful tool for sure, but it demands a whole lot from everyone involved.
Section 3. The narrative, most significant change.
This brings us to a framework that completely reshapes how we view data. It's called Most Significant Change, or MSC. It's defined as a participatory monitoring tool without indicators, relying entirely on collecting and analyzing qualitative stories of change. Think about how wild that is for a second. It abandons rigid, predefined metrics entirely. Instead, it relies purely on collecting and analyzing these qualitative stories from the ground up. It fully embraces fuzzy, open-ended human experiences.
So you're probably wondering, when do you actually throw out the rulebook and use a story-based system? Well, you use MSC for complex projects with multiple, unpredictable outcomes. You use it for behavior and social change initiatives, things that are incredibly hard to capture on a spreadsheet. And you use it when conventional monitoring systems simply struggle or fail to reflect the reality on the ground. Because the goal here isn't just ticking boxes for a donor, it's extracting deep learnings to actually improve the program.
Here's how this unique 10-step framework operates. Step 1, establish champions to advocate for the process. Step 2, establish domains of change. These are broad categories rather than strict metrics, keeping things natural. Step 3, define your reporting period. Now, Step 4 is really the beating heart of the whole process, collecting stories of change. Field workers literally just ask locals, what is the most significant change this project has brought to your life? And then Step 5, reviewing those stories within the hierarchy. These deeply personal narratives are reviewed and shortlisted as they move up the organizational ladder. The process then wraps up with these final steps. Step 6, regular stakeholder feedback so the community actually hears which stories were selected. Step 7, verify authenticity just to ensure these narratives represent real events. Step 8 is quantification, which we'll look at in just a second. Step 9, secondary analysis or meta-monitoring, looking for overarching patterns across all the submitted stories. And finally, Step 10, revise the MSC process itself. It's a system that systematically turns subjective stories into actionable program improvements.
Now, the crucial point here, and this is super important, is that even a narrative-based approach like MSC has room for hard data. There are 3 distinct methods to quantify these stories. First, within an individual story, you can extract hard numbers, like the exact amount of money spent or saved or the number of people involved. Second, frequency, counting the instances a specific change was selected by the review panels. And third, total count, looking at the overall occurrences of a specific change type across the board. It beautifully bridges the gap between human narratives and measurable data.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. If a massive project came to your town, which method would you trust to evaluate the success of your own community? Would you want progress spreadsheets tracking milestones, a rigid process checklist, or an open-ended narrative capturing your personal experience? It really reveals the delicate balance organizations must strike between quantitative metrics and human reality. Definitely think about that the next time you hear about a supposedly successful initiative. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how we measure the world around us.